Hi there. I'm so glad you could join me at today's workshop. My name is Magdalena Avshalaki. I'm the founder of Hormones Balance, a nutrition and herbal practice dedicated to helping women rebalance their hormones naturally. We're going to be going on in this workshop for about an hour together, and I have to tell you and warn you that I have put in a lot of content into this workshop today. You're going to be learning about herbs and what to remove in terms of chemicals, a lot of really great recipes. So I'm cramming a lot of content in, and I'm a fast talker. So do take down notes as quickly as you can. If you're not coping, then asking a question to our team is perfectly great. We always love to receiving your emails. The one thing I would ask you of is do not ask us specific medical questions because by law we can't answer them, but it's also not fair to you because we need more context to understand your condition. But if you have any questions about the workshop, about the upcoming program, please do feel to email us. Speaking of which, I'm going to try my best to teach you as much as I can in this hour, maybe a little bit longer workshop. But we do have a continuity opportunity. So if you want to be considering making herbs a serious part of your life, then there is a possibility of joining a 6-week program. And I'm going to tell you about that towards the end of this workshop. There is also a workbook a worksheet that you can download from the corner of this video here, one of the corners. I can't remember which corner right now. So grab it there, download the workbook. Now, if you haven't done so yet, don't worry about it. Just grab a piece of paper and a pen, and you're going to be jotting down a lot of the different symptoms and solutions that I'm going to be covering. Okay, and if you feel like there are some women in your life who's gonna benefit from this workshop, talking about herbs and hormones, they have a lot of hormonal problems, do feel free to share this workshop on the Facebook, and we do have a button for that to share out. All right, so let's dive in. The title of today's workshop is How to Use Herbs to Rebalance Your Hormones. Just a couple of things before we get started. I would love to give you some advice on the best viewing experience. Find a comfortable, quiet place. Make this your time, just me time that is nothing but you and that 1 hour spent together learning herbs. Turn off all the different applications that you have going on. Studies show after studies that multitasking actually is not saving us any time and it's not making us any more productive. Make sure you have a solid internet connection. Otherwise, you're gonna get choppy transmission and it's not gonna be the best experience. And put your phone on silence just for that 1 hour if you could. So, this is one of my favorite workshops to teach. It's so versatile, it's so fun. And the reason why I've created it is because there's such an incredible power that herbs have in helping us to rebalance our hormones that oftentimes we don't really realize. And sometimes it's just things that we have in the kitchen or we could have in the kitchen. The other reason is that I see a lot of even health conscious women still using a lot of skincare products that contain a highly hormone disrupting chemicals, and we're going to be talking about that. And I want to dispel some of those assurances that companies create and show you what to look out for. And with that, sometimes you are surrounded by so much of health information that some women just throw their hands up in the air and say everything is now so toxic. What am I supposed to eat? What am I supposed to wear? What am I supposed to put on my skin? Everything is toxic. And I want to show you that is not really true, and there's a way to navigate it without losing your sanity. And on top of that, I want to show you some of the really great DIY, quick, safe, and inexpensive ways that you can make a lot of different skincare products and herbal concoctions right in your kitchen. Sounds good? So here's what you're going to learn. We're going to be learning about hormone balancing herbs and spices, some endocrine disrupting chemicals, of course, recipes. I know you guys are very excited about that. And most importantly to me as a real wholehearted teacher is what can you do as the person receiving this information to go and practice. Learning is never going to be good when you just sit and listen. Learning is through doing. I'm really a strong believer on that. So one of the things I would love to encourage you to do is to learn to apply all the different learnings you're gonna learn here today. Before we get started with the specific herbs, I wanna talk about the different hormones that might be out of balance in your case. And so if you're using the workbook, pull it out. If you have it printed out, pull it out. If not, just pull out a piece of paper. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through the different hormonal imbalances that can be, that you might be experiencing. And so we're going to be going through high and low adrenals, high and low thyroid, high and low estrogen, high and low progesterone, high and low testosterone, and insulin, that's high or low. Now, some of you might say, well, I've already got my test done and I know which is my hormonal imbalance. And I can tell you that I see this over and over again, that a lot of the tests out there are actually missing the true picture, and especially if you get your steroid hormones, such as estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, adrenals or cortisol levels tested through blood, it's very inaccurate. So you can discover and uncover a lot more just basing it on symptoms and then get it diagnosed with a proper doctor using urine or salivary test for steroid hormones. All right, so let's get started. Let's look at adrenals first. Now, I'm gonna go through this really quickly. So what I would suggest you do is mark how many symptoms are you experiencing in every one of these hormonal imbalances, okay? So for example, if an adrenals, let me just read this through here, and then if you're experiencing, for example, 4 symptoms, just write down the number 4 next to adrenals low. So what will be the symptoms? Severe fatigue, memory loss, frequent sickness, overreactivity, crying spells, lack of motivation, lightheaded, salt cravings, low sex drive, unstable sugar levels. When you have high adrenals, then you feel wired and tired, or tired and wired, either way. Trouble sleeping, midnight waking, no energy in the morning, can't fall asleep, belly fat, anxiety, you feel scattered, short-fused, you have coffee cravings, and you've got hair loss. So write down how many of these are you experiencing, if any. Now let's take a look at thyroid. Infamously misdiagnosed and underdiagnosed. Low thyroid function would manifest in form of fatigue. I'm talking about severe fatigue, weight gain, cold hands, hair loss, brittle hair, depression, anxiety, foggy brain. Foggy brains means that you can't really think clearly. Infertility, memory loss, dry skin, breaking nails. So again, write down how many are you experiencing here. High thyroid, anxiety, panic attacks, heart palpitations, night sweats, wet hands, feeling hot, insomnia, hair loss, weight loss. Let's move on to estrogen. When you're experiencing low estrogen, you feel fatigue. You might be experiencing memory loss, hot flashes, osteoporosis, mood swings, hair loss, incontinence, muscle loss, sagging skin, no libido, vaginal dryness, and infertility. On the other hand, when you have a high estrogen, you're experiencing PMS, fibroids, endometriosis, breast lumps, swollen breast, fibrocystic breast, breast cancer, especially the one that's estrogen receptor positive cancer, infertility, hip fat, you are the classical pear shape as they call it, weight gain, cellulite, and water retention. A quick note here, you can be experiencing low and high estrogen at the same time. You can also be experiencing high and low cortisol at the same time. And I will not have the time to explain in this workshop, but if you're wondering how that happens, please do email my team and we're going to respond to you on that. Progesterone, on the other hand, very common with a lot of women, especially when you start hitting that age 35, 40, and above, low progesterone is pretty common. We are looking at things like insomnia, night waking, anxiety, infertility, miscarriages, weight gain, no periods, irregular periods, no ovulation, PMS, and mood swings. On the other hand, high progesterone typically only happens when you are supplementing with progesterone. So feeling drowsiness, sleepiness, feeling sluggish and depressed, that's what happens when you just overdose on progesterone as a supplement. So interestingly, 70% of women I work with suffer from some form of estrogen dominance. We dismiss it by saying, I've always been this way. If you want to be healthy, it is not okay to accept this hormonal imbalance. And this is one of those imbalances that I feel is very common and very misdiagnosed and very underestimated. And we're going to talk a little bit later about it. Why is that so important? So testosterone, in terms of low testosterone, you might be feeling muscle loss, muscle weakness, loss of confidence, lack of drive, difficulty concentrating, low libido, fatigue, hair loss, and waist fat. When you have high testosterone, on the other hand, which often happens with women with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, you might be experiencing weight gain, belly fat, so the classical apple shape, right? Hair loss, specifically in the front. Facial hair, on the other hand, is also hair like around the belly or nipples, infertility, ovarian cysts, acne, oily skin and hair, irritability, aggression, mid-cycle pain, or no cycle at all. Insulin, on the other hand, when it's low, fatigue, weight gain, cold hands, hair loss, brittle hair, depression, anxiety, foggy brain, infertility, memory loss, dry skin, and breaking nails. On the other hand, when you have high insulin, also happens a lot with women with PCOS, is weight gain, hungry after a meal, tired after a meal, craving sweets and carbs, frequent urination, vision changes, infertility, and type 2 diabetes. Okay? So, what do you do with these results? And the answer is, if you see more than 3 symptoms per section, it is an indication that you could be having this hormonal imbalance. And this is not a diagnosis by any means. You still need to work with a functional integrative doctor to get it diagnosed, but it's a strong indication that this is a hormonal imbalance you're going to look into. Okay, so I hope this was helpful, because I know for many of you this has been really eye-opening in terms of what might be going on, even though your doctor tells you that your progesterone is great, your estrogen is no problem at all, your thyroid is not an issue. And I see this over and over again. When we look at the symptoms, a very different picture starts opening up. So hormonal balance is really not about having too much or too little of any of these hormones. As you saw, thyroid cannot be too high or too low, right? Because then it throws you out of balance. Estrogen can't be too high or too low either. It throws you out of balance. So it's really all about that word balance. So what is it that got me into doing this work? You might be wondering. And so many of you I know don't know me, and so I want to just give you like literally a 2-minute quick overview of who I am and what I do. We always like to tell our stories from the time we were diagnosed with something. And for me, for sure, it was in 2008 when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease. However, when I look back and when I understand now the functional medicine world and functional nutrition, I realized very clearly that I was not a breastfed baby. I've had chronic eczema, ear infections, and food sensitivities right from the very early age. And then later these food sensitivities translated into, which they often do, they mutate or they change to, they manifest in a different way, such as adult acne, migraines, and PMS. I was plagued by those in my early 20s. Also in my late 20s, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism. So that's an autoimmune disease, which wasn't treated properly. So it seemingly went away with a couple of pills, which basically they suppressed my thyroid, not really addressing the root cause of the problem. And of course, it came back with a vengeance in 2008. I was then diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks the thyroid, and the thyroid starts dying. I also most certainly had an undiagnosed adrenal fatigue, which is not surprising because I am a type A, recovering, I hope, type of personality, and I've always been an overachiever in terms of my career and sports. I used to have a semi-professional competitive team actually. We used to race. I most certainly had estrogen dominance with a lot of the symptoms, things like boobs, having lumps on my boobs, and terrible PMSs, and having swelling of hands while traveling, and mood swings, and all of that crazy stuff that comes with estrogen dominance. Most likely I had it for many years until it was diagnosed actually much later. And then I battled with heavy metals and candida for probably over a decade. I used to live in China for a number of years, and for those of you who've been or you maybe heard, quality of food there leaves a lot to be desired, and so you never really know what is that you're putting in your body. So I most certainly had the heavy metals coming from there. Just a few years ago, I was diagnosed with H. pylori that was causing a lot of stomach issues, which is a pretty nasty bacteria to get rid of. I was then also diagnosed with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that was causing a lot of havoc in my digestion. So as you can see, a lot of stuff going on, right? And this is kind of, ironic, because my parents grew up with a lot of natural, living, what I call, right? I didn't grow up on packaged foods and TV dinners, and that was not my parents, mind you. They tried their best to give us the most natural living possible. I also grew up most of my life in Asia. From age 15 till I was 32, I lived in Asia, which interestingly, where food and medicine really merge, especially in the Chinese and Indian culture. Both of them I was very much exposed to. You cook with herbs and you treat them medicinally. There is no division between those two. And this is one of the reasons what inspired me to creating this workshop and a full program that I will gonna be telling you about later. I'm in total remission right now, and from both of the autoimmune diseases, and I've managed to reverse estrogen dominance and do not have adrenal fatigue anymore. My adrenals are actually in a really good shape. And I'm 45 years old today, and I have to tell you, I'm the healthiest at the age of 45 and thriving. And I feel better today than I felt when I was 25 years old. I'm the founder of Hormones Balance, like I was mentioning at the beginning, an herbal and nutrition practice dedicated to helping women rebalance their hormones, your hormones, naturally. I'm also a soon-to-be published author with the prestigious HarperCollins publisher. So one of the things I would love to talk to you about is dispelling the myths and facts about hormonal health. And I see this even with women who are highly educated, very self-aware of their own bodies and health in general, still believe a lot of the times in things that I want to flesh out here. And so let's just get through this first before we dive into herbs. And that is, the belief that hormonal problems are genetic. And I want to tell you that the science and the field of epigenetics has completely debunked that. And in case you're not familiar, epigenetics is the study of the science of applying nutrition, lifestyle choices, so things like sleep, detoxification, self-love, your thought patterns that can impact the expression of your genes. And so I see this over and over again, that women who have terrible genetics, and that includes me, I have so many double mutations for a number of different SNPs that can be causing serious hormonal problems, and I can live a very fulfilling and balanced life, provided I keep it clean. And so it is absolutely possible that your hormones will depend on what you do, the choices you make in your life, and not necessarily the genetics you inherited from your mom. Another one is that birth control pills will help. Fibroids will help, PCOS will help, a lack of periods, right? You name it. I have a problem with that because they offer maybe a temporary solution, if at all, but they do not address the underlying cause of why is it being caused in the first place? What is the imbalance that's causing that? What is the toxicity factor that's causing it? Things like removing a uterus because of fibroids will solve the problem, will take the problem away, right? The pains will stop, the bleeding will stop. Well, again, does it address the root cause of a problem? If you said you have fibroids, then fibroids are most of the time caused by estrogen dominance. Now, estrogen dominance can also be causing things like breast cancers and thyroid cancers and ovarian cancers. And so you're removing the uterus, but are you removing the estrogen dominance that can be causing other issues further down the road? No. And I see this over and over, and that hurts me so bad. And that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about doing this workshop and this work. Causes of breast cancers are unknown. A lot of organizations and associations, you see them saying that, right? The fact is that we know that 80% of breast cancers are due to estrogen. They have what's called the estrogen receptor positive breast cancers. And so we know how to reverse estrogen dominance. And that's one of the big things I'm going to be talking to you about in this workshop. And so it is not unknown. It is not unknown. Or you might hear somebody say, there is no evidence that nutrition and herbs can help. Well, let me tell you, there's lots of evidence, and I'm going to be sharing many of them here with you just in a second. The way I have organized this workshop for you today is talking about the different food and nutrients, We're going to be talking about herbs and spices, and then we're going to be talking about chemical detox, things that you can throw away from your house and the products you're using to save your hormonal balance. So imagine your hormones like a three-legged stool. And there are three bodily systems that govern good hormonal balance. Can you guess what they are? So while you're thinking, let me just give you a quick analogy here. Imagine one of the legs of this stool missing and you're sitting on top of it. What happens? You tumble, right? What would happen if one of the legs is significantly short? I mean, you're gonna be so uncomfortable, almost impossible to balance too, right? And so with hormones, it's exactly the same thing. There are three bodily systems I have found over the years that I've been doing this work that really govern a good hormonal balance. And they are your gut health, liver detoxification, and your sugar balance. So let's dive into every one of these and talk about the herbs that support, the plant allies that support these three bodily systems. In your workbook, you have this piece of this part here, which talks about digestive health and what are the plant allies, liver, sugar balance. So when you have it, if you have it printed out, you're going to be jotting down all the different plant allies. And if you don't, then just pull out a piece of paper and take notes. I want to first bring a little bit of appreciation for you so that you understand the connection between these three bodily systems and hormones. What's the big deal about having a good digestive health? What's the big deal if you're constantly constipated, you have a lot of bloating, you have gas, you have acid reflux, you have burping after a meal, you have stomach aches every time you eat something? What's the big deal about that? Why should we address it? How is it connected to hormones? Interestingly, things like, for example, the stomach acid, having sufficient amount of stomach acid is so critical in extracting the different nutrients from the food that you're putting into your body. And remember, a lot of the foods are actually medicinal and a lot of foods are also herbs in some ways. We're going to talk about that. And so for you to really be able to extract that goodness of the food and for the food to get chomped down and for the enzymes to engage, you've got to have sufficient stomach acid. I'm not going to have the time to talk about this today, but did you guys know that acid reflux is actually, the causation is low stomach acid, not high stomach acid. Just Google that. Acid reflux, and low stomach acid. You'll see what comes out. You're going to be surprised. So for those of you who are on anti-acids, I really encourage you to reconsider that. Do some research on that. Another thing is that the digestive health also produces bile. And I will show you in a second how important it is to binding and evacuation of those antagonistic metabolites of estrogens that are actually causing a lot of havoc in your body, like all the breast cancers and infertility and ovarian cancers, thyroid nodules, etc. Now, having a good bowel movement, in other words, if you are not having a good bowel movement, meaning if you have constipation, can also impact your hormonal balance. You know how? Interestingly, we poop out the metabolized hormones. Hormones that the body does not want anymore, they are harmful to our bodies, they are separated in the liver, and then they get passed on to the large intestine, and you poop them out. Now, when you're constipated, you're not able to, these hormones aren't coming out, and so they re-enter the body. They re-enter through the walls of the large intestine. They go back into the body, causing a lot of symptoms again. Another one which is really fascinating is the estrobolome. The estrobolome is a subset of bacteria in the gut, right? I'm sure most of you have heard of probiotics, the good bacteria. The fascinating thing is the estrobolome is a subset of the good bacteria in the gut that breaks down estrogens. So who would have thought that somebody who's got a poor bacterial flora in the gut can actually have a lot of problems with estrogen issues? So, and then, for a lot of people, like I described this stuff like acid reflux and constipation and all these gut issues like, being bloated all the time, having digestive problems like food not moving along, that actually creates stress in the body. And you know what? That stress releases cortisol, right? And so that's one of the contributing factors to estrogen dominance. What about liver? I already mentioned that the liver is responsible for metabolism of a lot of hormones, the segregation, the separation of the metabolites that are harmful and the ones that are beneficial that should stay. And so estrogen metabolism is largely happening in the liver itself. The specific pathways that make it happen, like the sulfation and methylation pathways. Guess what? Thyroid conversion happens in the liver as well, partly in the gut as well, but largely in the liver. And what I mean by that is that you have the inactive T4 hormone, which you produce, or if you're taking Synthroid, you're taking a synthetic version of the T4 hormone. And guess what? It needs to get converted to T3, which is the active hormone in the thyroid that gives you beautiful hair, plump skin, good memory, energy, ability to convert fat to energy so you don't put on weight, right? That's all happening in the liver. Fat synthesis, which makes the fat available for production of our steroid hormones, happens in the liver. Toxin evaluation, bile production happens in the liver. And I'm going to talk about bile in just a second when we talk about the liver. What about sugar balance? You know, things like hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, sugar cravings are all signs of an imbalance. And not only do they pull down your adrenals, but guess what? The pancreas, right, which produces insulin, is actually a hormone. Insulin is a hormone, and the pancreas is part of the endocrine system. So the endocrine system is like a deck of cards, like a house of cards, rather, sorry. You pull out one card, you push one card at the bottom, you know what happens. The whole thing collapses. So think of your hormonal balance a little bit like that. And sugar balance is one of the critical factors of that three-legged stool I talked about. You tumble and collapse if you don't have that balanced out. So this is really the foundation of hormonal balance. And as much as I know many of you probably heard, yeah, you know, if I have hot flashes, I'll just do black cohosh. Or if I have sugar problems, I mean, you know, I heard about cinnamon being really beneficial. Sure. But if you do not have these other bodily systems in place, you're never gonna experience a really good hormonal balance. So let's talk about the foundational plant allies. I love that word, plant allies, don't you? Instead of just calling it herbs, spices. They are our allies. Like, they are the allies with our body. They're there to support us and heal us and nurture us, right? So digestive health. What are the plant allies? We're gonna be going one by one, actually. So I just want to flesh out all of them here, but I want to give you a little prelude to knowing what are we gonna be going through in the coming half an hour, 45 minutes, right? So let's talk about two of my favorite herbs when it comes to supportive your digestive health: stinging nettles and slippery elm. As you can see, there's a lot of other ones like aloe, parsley, turmeric, fennel seed, thyme, cinnamon, cloves. I teach all of that in the full program. In an hour, I just cannot do everything. But I want to dive deeper into these two and show you how phenomenal they are. You know, one of the things you learn about me is that I love culinary arts, I love cooking, I love playing with herbs, I love running these workshops, but I also love science. And to me, you know, folklore is one thing, but I also love to know that something that I'm teaching you has a pretty good scientific backing. So I'm going to be showing you some of the studies that support some of the claims I'm making here. Take a look at slippery elm. University of Maryland Medical Center said, slippery elm has been used as an herbal remedy in North America for centuries. Native Americans use slippery elm in healing salves for wounds, boils, ulcers, burns, and skin inflammation. Slippery elm contains mucilage, a substance that becomes a slick gel when mixed with water. It coats and soothes the mouth, throat, stomach, and intestine. It also contains antioxidants that can help relieve inflammatory bowel conditions. Slippery elm causes reflux stimulation of nerve endings in the gastrointestinal tract, leading to increased mucus secretion. It is often suggested for the following conditions: esophageal reflux disease, so in other words, GERD or acid reflux, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, IBS, diarrhea or constipation, and externally also used as wounds, burns, boils, psoriasis, and other skin conditions, right? So a very versatile, very anti-inflammatory herb or plant ally. So how do you make it? It's really pretty simple. You take 1 teaspoon of slippery elm bark powder. So I want to just, I want to show you. So the picture on top here, this is actual bark, but you want to get the powder form, right? Or you can grind it yourself in a coffee grinder. And then you combine it with 1.5 cups of hot water. You whisk it together, let it thicken, and basically sip it throughout the day. I've had clients with Crohn, IBS, IBD, taking this tea and having incredible results in just calming down the digestion. So if you saw the workbook, you have the recipes all lined up there. And so I made the space for you to start filling things up. So make sure you pull out your recipe right now and book and start filling in those recipes. I want you to write things down. We learn when we write things down. We do not learn by just reading and looking, okay? So this is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, is so that you learn, write it down. The next plant ally I want to talk about is one of my absolute favorites. Can you guess what it is? Can you see those little stings right at the bottom of the leaf? Some of you have fallen into those when you were a kid. I certainly have. Stinging nettles, also known as Urtica dioica. Very safe, slightly diuretic form of herb. Highly nutritive, full of calcium, iron, magnesium, potassium, and silica. High in chlorophyll and vitamin C. A very gentle kidney tonic and uterine tonic. In fact, you know, in women's sort of like a folklore herbalism, it's always been used for taking care of the uterus. It's also alkalizing for the whole body, and it's hugely anti-inflammatory for joint pains and osteoporosis, psoriasis, hot flashes, and PMS. So I want to show you again some of the backup to these claims, and this comes from clinical breast cancer. So it says Urtica dioica extract inhibits proliferation, induces apoptosis, and related gene expression of breast cancer cells in vitro and in vivo. So a couple of things here, but basically what it means is that it stops the proliferation, right, and induces apoptosis. Means it's a self-killing mechanism, so the cells kill themselves. In breast cancer in vitro, so, and in vivo, which means in real people. This is particularly done in mice here. And so the conclusion, let's take a look at a conclusion here that says these results suggest that Urtica dioica extract can decrease the growth of breast tumors and induce apoptosis in tumor cells. Thus, it might represent an ideal therapeutic tool for breast cancer. Isn't that amazing? Another one. Urtica dioica extract suppresses the MIR21 and metastasis-related genes in breast cancer. Now, this is done on humans, and it says that Urtica dioica significantly inhibited breast cancer cell proliferation. Moreover, findings from Scotch assay exhibited an inhibitory effects of nettles, basically, on the migration of breast cancer cell lines. Right? That's really important, the migration of breast cancer cell lines. This is done in human. It's quite amazing. So I want to share with you, how do you make this? And it looks seemingly simple, but actually there's a little trick to this I want to share with you. So one of the things you can start doing is making a nettle tea infusion. Pretty simple recipe, 1/4 to 1/2 cup dried nettles in a quart of water. Now you want to steep it for 12 to 24 hours. That's how you get the most medicinal value out of this, when you steep it for that long. I typically leave it on the kitchen counter overnight, get up and drink it, or keep it for a little bit longer until 24 hours. You do not want to go over 24 hours and then drink it. Getting the most out of the nettles, interestingly, so the infusion, the length of the infusion matters, but the other thing that really matters a lot is that studies have found, I found actually these studies that show that when you steep it in the range of the 140 Fahrenheit or 60 centigrade, and not in the boiling water, that's how you can get the most out of the nutrients out of these nettles. Little trick like that, most people don't teach you this, but it's because I'm a bit of a science geek, I love to look up these kind of studies. This is how we discovered with my team when we worked on our program that this is really very important. And this is the reason why you can see in the photo how dark and rich green, how full of nutrient it is, versus like when you just dip a nettle tea bag for 10 minutes. Just not the same. So remember we talked about liver being the second leg of that stool, right? I want to just remind you one more time, estrogen metabolism happens in the liver, thyroid conversion of the thyroid hormone happens from T4 to T3. Fat synthesis, so it's a precursor for your steroid hormones, happens there. Toxin evacuation, and a bile production. So what's the big deal about bile? I'm pretty fascinated by this because so many people in the United States have their gallbladders removed, rendering it like a useless organ that we just don't need anymore. Remove it, right? And as much as it can be very uncomfortable to have all these gallstones, for a lot of people it's actually pretty reversible. If you work with a naturopath or a proper herbalist who really specializes in that, you can save your gallbladder. And the gallbladder stores the bile, and the reason why it's so important to hold on to it for as much as you can is because the bile binds excess estrogen and its harmful metabolites. It helps to synthesize the fats, the precursors for steroid hormones like estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, DHEA, and testosterone. And beyond it all, it helps you live a normal life and enjoy all food rather than having to be either dependent on ox bile for the rest of your life or just completely avoiding fats and meats and nuts because you just everything just runs through you, right? So some of the herbs that I want to show you here that really are these beautiful allies to liver detoxification are bitter greens, dandelion leaves, dandelion roots, parsley, burdock, milk thistle. If you've tasted any of these herbs, or some of them, or maybe all of them, you may realize that there is a theme here. Can you see what is the theme? All of them are bitter. So think of it, for those of you maybe who've been to France, or perhaps you have a family tradition of having a bit of an aperitif or a digestive before a meal, where perhaps it's alcoholic, or maybe it is just a bitter of some sort that your dad has been making, your grandfather, your grandma's been making, and you do a little shot before a meal. All these bitters, if you think about it, all these aperitifs and digestives are always bitter in nature, right? And there's a good reason for that. They stimulate our digestive juices, like preparing the body for the food that's just about to come, right? It increases the stomach acid, so just to break down all the food and extract all the really good nutrients, all the vitamins and minerals out of the food you are digesting, or herbs as well. And that stomach acid also initiates all the enzymatic activity. The production of enzymes only happens when you have sufficient stomach acid, right? So bitters stimulate that. And unfortunately, bitters, it's a very forgotten and lost flavor. Today, we replaced it with a lot of times with sours and obviously with sweetness, forgetting about the bitters. So do not forget about the bitters. Some of my favorite herbs and spices and vegetables that are bitter, that support the liver beautifully, is like asparagus, dandelion, root and leaf. We're gonna talk about that in a second. Celery, Swiss chard, radishes, and bok choy, right? Bring those on a daily basis to your life. So let's talk about dandelion leaves, Taraxacum officinale. Now leaves and their root, as you will see in a second, they have some similarities, but they are also quite different in terms of their medicinal properties. So leaves are a natural diuretic. They're a natural kidney cleanser. They're a beautiful bitter, so they are a digestive stimulant nevertheless. They help with bile production, right? Because they are bitter, so they help with the bile. They're high in vitamin C and B6, thiamine, riboflavin, calcium, iron, and potassium. They contain folate, magnesium, phosphorus, and copper. And the Cherokee used to use them for calming the nerves. So how do you, what do you do with them, right? And first of all, you can start harvesting yourself. Depending on the time of the year, spring, fall, summer is a good time to harvest them. Make sure you get them harvested from places that do not have dogs and cats pooping and peeing, and there is no herbicides or any fertilizers being sprayed around. So pretty wild. They're gonna be bitter, very bitter, more so than those ones in a store, but also much higher in medicinal properties. In this picture, I'm actually holding a whole bunch of them. You can see my sweater here. We were collecting the leaves in Iceland. This is my Icelandic sweater. This is the summer in Iceland, by the way. So what do you do with these beautiful green leaves, dandelion leaves? I mean, they grow everywhere, right? They're just a real pest, but most people don't realize that they actually also heal. You can start adding them chopped up to salads, perhaps with other vegetables like arugula and mizuna and lettuce, whatever you like to use for spinach, whatever you like to use for salads, just chop them up and add them in. On their own, they're pretty bitter. It's hard to just make a dandelion salad, but add them in. Start making pestos. So combining them with perhaps with cilantro and basil and parsley, and just making that into this beautiful herbal medicinal pesto. You can start adding them to soups, or you start making infusions with them as well. Now, dandelion root is slightly different. It strengthens and detoxifies the liver. So the root is the liver. It does the liver work. It is also a bitter, so a natural digestive stimulant. It helps bioproduction. It strengthens the immune system. It also is known for balancing blood sugar levels. And inherently, because it supports the liver, guess what? It helps with estrogen dominance and hence it helps symptoms of PMS. Again, let's do a little bit of a geek talk here. So I want to just show you, let's take a look at this one. Hepatocurative potential of sesquiterpene lactones in Tarakum officinale on carbon tetrachloride induced liver toxicity in mice. So a very fancy way of saying that, you see this word here, sesquiterpene lactones is the active compound in the roots, and basically they injected these mice with toxins, and the result is, let's take a look at the bottom here, the results indicate that sesquiterpene lactones have a protective effect against acute hepatotoxicity induced by administration of CC14 in mice. Hepatotoxicity is basically the toxicity of the liver. So really cool study. And another one I have for you here, this one is done on humans. Evaluation of, let's take a look at this one here, of equitous extracts of Tarakum officinale on growth and invasion of breast and prostate cancer cells. So let's take a look at the bottom. The study provides new scientific data on TO, in other words, our dandelion root, and suggests that TO extract or individual components present in the extracts may be of value as novel anti-cancer agents. Cool stuff, right? Quite amazing. So how can you bring dandelion root into your life? You can add them to smoothies, you can make them into lattes, and you can make a dandelion coffee. I'm gonna show you in a second how to do this. And by the way, just a quick note here, I always recommend to buy your herbs in this form here and then grind them freshly for a short period of time. Use them in a short period of time. When you grind something, they lose a lot of their medicinal properties, so you do not wanna buy them pre-ground already. So, write down this recipe, roasted dandelion latte. Very simple. You take half a cup of full fat coconut milk, then use 1 cup of hot water, 1 teaspoon of roasted dandelion root powder, and then just a little bit of honey. Place them all the ingredients in a blender and mix for 20 seconds. What comes out is what you see right here in this picture. This beautiful coffee tasting latte that isn't coffee, and it's just this wonderful support for your liver. Okay, let's talk about sugar balance, which is the third leg of our proverbial hormone balance stool. Cinnamon, fenugreek, turmeric, ginseng, bilberry, licorice, oregano, sage, garlic are some of the very potent plant allies that help to rebalance our sugar levels. I talk about all of them in a full program. Today I'm going to have time only to talk about cinnamon, but it's a powerful one, and it's also a tricky one and a really interesting one, and I want to share with you something that you probably don't know about. Most people don't. True cinnamon, also known as Cinnamonum verum, aids blood sugar balance, helps with PCOS, it's a natural antioxidant, it's an antimicrobial, it's got anti-inflammatory properties, and it's got cardiovascular support. Now, that's a lot, right? And you know what? I do not have the time to show you all the studies, but I just want to show you, I've pulled those from greenmedinfo.com, which pulls information from PubMed. I have full access to that, and so I want to share with you just the titles of these studies to show you that how incredibly potent cinnamon is. Let's take a look at the one on top here. Cinnamon is compared significantly reduces the severity and duration of pain during menstruation, but this effect is less compared to that of ibuprofen. Sure, fair enough, but ibuprofen also messes up our liver big time if used frequently. So cinnamon doesn't. Cinnamon reduces insulin resistance parameters in polycystic ovarian syndrome, right? Cinnamon tea significantly decreases postprandial maximum glucose levels in non-diabetic adults. Helps with sugar balance, right? The intake of 2 grams of cinnamon for 12 weeks significantly reduced HbA1c, systolic and diastolic blood pressures amongst poorly controlled type 2 diabetes patients. That's also, again, sugar levels and pressure, right? Cinnamon usage is associated with better working memory in people with prediabetes. So you can see a lot of really great stuff coming from this beautiful spice. Herb is actually both. Cinnamon precautions. So is a slight blood thinner. So do not use if you have blood thinning medications, if you're using those, if you have ulcers, and do not use in pregnancy or lactation beyond using it just as a cooking spice in foods. So this is the little trick question I had for you. We have the cinnamon on the left side, also known as cinnamon cassia. And on the right side, we have the Ceylon cinnamon, also known as the real cinnamon, or the Latin name is Cinnamomum verum. Now, which cinnamon do you think is more toxic? The one that you see all the time in all the shops, coffee shops, is massively produced and used in most of the food that we're consuming, or would it be Ceylon cinnamon? What do you think is the answer? So let me give you a little bit of a story behind these two cinnamons. And so cinnamon cassia, which is what you find in pretty much in every coffee shop, is the woody, it's hard to break, it's got mild aroma, it's a sweet and kind of spicy spectrum, and is, like I said, most widely used. On the other hand, Ceylon cinnamon is flaky, it's very easy to break, it's very flavorful, it's sweeter, and it's only mildly spicy. You can order it online. Well, interesting thing is that the cinnamon that's widely used is very high in coumarin, where Ceylon cinnamon is way lower in coumarin. And coumarin is a substance that actually inhibits the liver function. So if you're using cinnamon for therapeutic purposes, you definitely want to be using the Ceylon cinnamon, also known as the real cinnamon, which is more difficult to come by. You probably would not find it in most regular stores, although I do see it in Whole Foods in many places. A lot of the herbal shops will obviously carry that. And that's the cinnamon I advise you to use. So how, there's so many ways of bringing that into your life, right? And one of them, I want to share with you one of my favorite recipes, and that's the nourishing protein bowls. Really simple recipe of using 1/3 cup of sunflower seed butter, although you can replace it with like other butters like cashew butter or almond butter. It doesn't really matter, whatever is your fancy, whatever you can tolerate, you feel good on. And then you add 1 tablespoon of honey or maple syrup or maybe molasses, and then 3 tablespoons of herbal powders I'm going to show you in a second, and that could also be cinnamon, and a dash of sea salt. Sea salt, or salt generally, amplifies the sweetness of anything. So you're only using 1 tablespoon of honey here, but when you add a dash of salt, it's gonna make the whole food taste sweeter, and that way you don't have to use so much sugar. Isn't that great? So let's take a look at some of the herbal powders that you can bring in and to make this recipe. It could be amalaki, which is also known as amla. It's a food it's highest in vitamin C. It's a berry from India, also used a lot in Ayurvedic medicine. You can use the 3 tablespoons, yeah. And I talked about you can use cacao powder because it's high in magnesium. You can use cinnamon powder for sugar balance. You can bring in collagen powder for beautiful skin, nails, and gut health. You can add some licorice powder for deeply fatigued adrenals. You can bring in some maca root powder for balancing hormones and it's aphrodisiac properties too. Try perhaps the roasted dandelion root powder for liver support, the one that I showed you. Could be milk thistle powder, also for liver support. Slippery elm we talked about in a powder form for digestive support. Or shatavari powder, which is a really wonderful, libido stimulating, also Ayurvedic herb. Yeah, so you can see the recipe is very versatile. And when I just repeat this one more time, a third of a cup sunflower butter, 1 tablespoon of a sweetener, and 3 tablespoons of any of the herbal powders. And a dash of sea salt, of course. Fine sea salt, don't use the big one. So in a second, we're going to be talking about plant allies for adrenal support, endocrine disrupting chemicals that I want you to get out of your house, and some more fun and safe recipes. And before I do that, I want to tell you about the Herbs for Balance 6-week online herbal hormone program that I'm so proud of. And some of you might be considering joining us for the full experience if you feel like this workshop makes a lot of sense and is beneficial to you. The reason why I created that workshop and the program is because herbs have such a beautiful, natural way of amplifying healing. When I say amplify, I mean, I look at herbs as being like the companion to a really good, clean, and anti-inflammatory diet, right? But once you have your diet nailed down, herbs can do such beautiful, amplified healing to what you're already doing. I also feel that a lot of women, like I said at the beginning, throw their hands up and say, I am so confused, and everything is toxic, there's just so much of fear, confusion around messaging around herbs, but also supplements, and that, you know, and a lot of misuse and a lot of miscommunication. So I want to dispel all of that to give you a lot of clarity and confidence on how to use herbs in your life. But also because, you know, I find that products that are clean, that do not have those chemicals we're going to be talking about later in this workshop, are severely overpriced. Instead, they are a quick and easy and safe and inexpensive way of DIYing products, and that's what I want to teach you in the full program. So who is this program for? Anybody with thyroid or Hashimoto's, if you have adrenal fatigue, if you've been diagnosed or you self-diagnose estrogen dominance, you've got signs of perimenopause, or you're headed for menopause, you're struggling with PCOS, or you've got PMS issues. But also, like, if you don't know what it is, but you do know you have weight issues, you're dealing with depression, anxiety, fatigue, you've got hair loss going on, cellulite you just can't get rid of, PMS, breast cancers and lumps, thyroid lumps and cancers, endometriosis, fibroids, you know, this is a really great program for all of that. You know, the things you're going to be learning is things like, what's so great about maca? And it's not just, you know, a lot of people feel terrible on maca, but because you've got to know what kind of strain to use and what form to use the maca in. Beautiful things like ginger, or, you know, the context that I just gave you, the little nuance about cinnamon, what a difference it can make between making yourself toxic and healing yourself, right? And bringing in things like turmeric into your life in different forms. And maybe you have not heard of Tulsi, a holy basil, which is so widely available and yet is so underused, but it's a beautiful adaptogen to incorporate. Or Pau d'Arco, it's a bark of a tree from the Amazonia that helps with candida a lot. Learn how to use red clover, for example, you know, or shiitake mushrooms, which is so incredibly healing and boost the immune system. Dong quai, many of you have heard as being for women with menopause, but actually women with PMS can also benefit from that. Or the healing properties of broccoli sprouts, which, did you guys know that studies show that a cup of broccoli sprouts can actually shrink breast cancers in women and have the same efficacy as tamoxifen, that highly, highly toxic estrogen blocker that's given to women with breast cancers that completely messes up our liver. Or the wonderful matcha tea that lifts you up, that's a way better booster than a coffee, much gentler booster, yet gives you the energy for so much longer than coffee. Or reishi mushrooms that are used in China for people with cancer and to boost their immune systems for the body to fight back whatever is the condition that you're fighting. And there's 30 other herbs and spices that I want you to know about and be empowered to bring that into your daily life in cooking. The program format is that it's a 6-week program. You do it completely in your own time. You join now, you can start at any time. So I know many of you say, I am so busy right now, life is crazy. there are some incentives we have for you to join now. I'll tell you about that in a second. The good news is you start next year, 2 years from now, 3 weeks from now. It's up to you. It's just because it's totally and fully online, you can just do it however, whatever fits into your life. But also you get access for life. So it's a 6-week program, as in the modules will be opening up over 6 weeks, but you get the access for life, right? The material is all yours. It's always going to be there. And one of the best parts is the community support. We have this wonderful, thriving community of women who have done all my programs. We are there to support each other. We post questions, we cook together, we have contests together. It's really a lot of fun. So what do you get? The first thing is you're gonna get a recipe book with 140 hormone balancing recipes. It comes in a PDF. And for those of you who are joining us within the first 48 hours from watching this workshop, you're also gonna get a physical copy of this beautiful book. So some of the recipes I want to tell you about is, and this is just some of them because we have 140 in total, is things like the hormone balancing infusion. We have hormone balancing lattes in chais, so like ashwagandha latte. And one of my absolute favorites are the hormone balancing chais, where I'm using reishi mushrooms and chaga mushrooms, immune balancing, plus the warming effects of the chai spices. I'm going to learn how to make golden milk. Different inspired drinks and smoothies, so things like, for example, making your own lemon balm lemonade that doesn't have excessive sugar in it. It's so refreshing. Working with things like turmeric and ginger and combining that with pineapple, which helps to stimulate your digestive juices. Or look at the bottom right where you have the dandelion miso soup. Again, we are using the dandelion leaves in a soup form and also balancing it out with other nutrients so it's not so bitter and it's so nourishing. You're going to learn about healing condiments and things like making various forms of pestos. So for example, here's a cilantro pesto that has got a property of binding heavy metals and evacuating through your body. Seed butter, you're going to learn about seed rotation, how to use different seeds and different types of your cycle so that you can rebalance your hormones. Body creams and lotions, I'm super passionate about that. One of my absolute favorite is the whipped body butter. You're going to learn. But also, if you look at hair care, we're giving you recipes from the cleansing clay shampoo that I've learned. It's a method I've learned in Morocco. Women are using that all over their bodies to cleanse. I also want to share with you the hair regrowth formula that is using an herb from India that is used by women in India who've lost their hair because of chemotherapy. That's how potent that formula is. Facial and lip care. I love that honey cream lip gloss. It just makes you feel like you've just eaten honey. But we also have cool things for you like the anti-wrinkle oil. Under healing salves, one of the things you will learn is magnesium cream. If you have compromised digestion, you are not absorbing magnesium from supplements, you can bring that in topically, and I want to show you how to make that magnesium cream. But also one of my other favorites is the anti-cellulite balm that really works wonders. For dental care, I want to show you how to learn to make the oil pulling, how to use oil pulling and adding neem to it. We've had women use this, go to their dentist, and the dentist will say after 2 months of them doing oil pulling, what have you done to your teeth? They look amazing, right? And there is so much more. Gosh, there's 140 recipes and they are all beautiful and amazing. We've got beautiful photography to come along with it. You're also gonna get the buying resource guide with all the ingredients are easily available at your local health store, herbal store, or obviously online. And we're gonna be pointing you to all the resources we trust and we recommend. All the recipes that are culinary are free of gluten, dairy, eggs, and corn. The second thing you're gonna get, which I think is so beautiful, is the hormone balancing food and herb wheel. For those of you everybody gets the PDF version, but if you're joining us within the 48-hour window, you also will get the printed poster. I'll show you a little snippet of the poster. So for example, when you look at adrenals, we show you what are the foods that are beneficial. And then the arrow number 3 shows you the herbs and spices that will be so beneficial for adrenal fatigue. I hang this poster in my kitchen so that I get constantly reminded about what are some of the things I can add on. What else can I throw into my tea when I'm feeling a little bit run down? What else can I be putting into my soup when I'm coming down with a cold, for example, to boost my immune system? I've also created an instructional video library for you. I believe that you will learn so much better by seeing than just by reading. How many times have you made a recipe because you saw it online, you saw it on YouTube, and you run and buy the ingredients, you make it? We learn by watching, and that's why we have the whole library of videos for you to do so. You would also get access to our 8 modules with lectures, and these lectures are on gut healing, liver detoxification, sugar balance, adrenal recovery, thyroid revival, perimenopause and menopause, estrogen dominance, and PCOS. These lectures will help you to set a context of what's so great about these herbs, when to use them, when not to use them, teaching you, giving you the context and the power of understanding herbs rather than just blindly be saying, oh, this herb for this thing, without reading, like the cinnamon thing that I gave you an example of, right? How much of a change is that for you when you know that this type of cinnamon is so much less toxic? Or how much more value is that to you to know that you can get so much more from the nettles when you infuse them for a longer period of time, not in a boiling water, right? That's the kind of stuff that you're going to learn from the modules. But also aligning the plant allies with the different hormonal imbalances. Now, the investment for the program is, for all of this, is only $297 for one-time payment. And for those of you who need a little bit of a spread of payments, we've got 2-part payments for you that are built 30 days apart. Today is $159, and then 30 days later is another $159, okay? So the cool new thing is also it's a risk-free purchase, and we give you a guarantee that if you feel like the program is not for you, not a problem, we're gonna refund you within a period of 7 days. To join us, you will see the link next to this video, but also you can hit up herbsforbalance.com/join. You can also get an email after this workshop so that you can just easily go there, check out the site, see whether the program is right for you. So I want to just mention that, we have the quick action bonuses. I just love women who are like, that's it, this is for me, I'm gung-ho, I'm changing things around my cabinets, I want to throw things out, I'll add in these beautiful herbs. I want to reward that. And so the quick action bonus is a printed version of this beautiful book, and you get that book shipped to you 7 days after your purchase. And so that's if you join us within the next 48 hours. Okay, sounds good? The second one is I want to send you the printed version of the poster so you can hang it in your kitchen and be looking at this and be reminded and inspired, because it certainly works for all of the women who have joined our programs. So again, it's like this is the second quick action bonus. The third one is the clean and safe brands. You might not have the time to be making everything yourself, and so I have a list of brands that I love, I recommend, I use it in my private life. People who are close to me are using them as well, and so I want to share with you those brands as well. So one more time, printed book, printed poster, and a safe and clean brands sent to you, shipped to you within 48 hours from the time of watching this workshop. Okay, sounds good? So I just want to tell you, before we move on with the workshop, some of the benefits, like what do women get out of this? One of the things that we've been told consistently is that by looking at these recipes and learning, like especially the template recipes, like the nourishing bowls of using different powders, it sparks a lot of creativity in us. And many of you will say, I'm not a creative type. And I'll say, BS. Because when you join the program, you're gonna be so inspired of be wanting to try and experiment. And that itself is such a great creativity sparking point. The other thing I really want you to stop doing is stop dabbling. Stop dabbling and make herbs part of your daily routine. So it's not like that thing once in a while you do, when you're coming down with a cold or you got a headache, but it's bringing the herbs on a daily, regular basis, because that's when healing happens. Learn to customize your products. Like sometimes you go to a store, and even if it's a clean product, it's like peppermint and lavender. You're like, oh my God, I wish they had more flavors or more scents. Learn to make it yourself. It's so simple. There's so many beautiful things you're going to learn from this program. Deodorants and creams and salves. Passing on the knowledge to your kids. I have so many women who told me that they see hormonal imbalances and problems in their daughters already at the age of 10, 11, things that we as women had never experienced. And so my wish for you is to pass on the knowledge to your kids, and so they heal and you give them the best life possible. Another thing I think is cool is that, empower the women in your community. It's that moment when you walk into a family gathering or you go to a club or whatever you go out for dinner with girlfriends and people say, oh my God, that smells so beautiful. What is that? And you go, well, that's just the salve I just made with vetiver and grapefruit. And they go like, oh my God, what is this? Can I make this too? And that's how you empower other women. They get curious by you living that example, and you spread that knowledge. You infect other people in the best way possible. Another cool thing is these recipes, you can make that into do-it-yourself products for another woman. Use it as gifts. It is so much more touching to be receiving a gift that is made by you. That feeling when somebody has made something for you, they wrote a card rather than be buying a ready-made card. It's that difference. I use this all the time. I make presents and gifts for my friends and they love it. I don't go to the store anymore. But also support sustainable sources. I'm a big fan of that. Organic farming is so hard. Sourcing organic produce is so hard. There is so much less profit in it than in the big when you buy bulk and from people who don't care what they do to this planet and other people. And so we have this why I've created those resources for you so you know exactly where to purchase them from. So you're supporting the right people and doing the right things for the earth and for other humans. And also, if you're concerned about that, reducing packaging footprint is going to be another benefit of DIYing a lot of the things here. Okay? So I hope this is compelling for you. If you're ready to join, come on over to herbsforbalance.com/join and come on this journey with us. It's going to be so much fun. All right, let's talk about what's coming up next, and that's the chemicals. We're going to be talking about adrenal support and then more fun recipes. So let's dive straight in. Okay, this is not so much fun part. This is the less fun part, but I want to talk about it. That moment you find a lump, you self-examine, and it's like, it's right there. And then it comes with that moment of either total denial, when you go, oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. Total freak out and a panic, right? What do I do? Do I do with mammogram? Do I do a sonogram? Do I do, a heat map? Like, what is the right thing? Like, is that credible even? Who do I see? And so I hate anybody to be living in a place of fear. For those of you who've had lumps before, I certainly had them, and I never forget what a fearful and terrifying moment that was. Now, one of the big things that's causing lumps in women are the what's called the high estrogen, also known as estrogen dominance, is causing that, but also low progesterone can be causing that. So remember the symptoms we talked about at the beginning of this workshop when you got all the PMS. So for high estrogen, you're experiencing PMS, fibroids, endometriosis, breast lumps, swollen breast, fibrocystic breast, breast cancer, infertility, hip, We've gone through over them. You go back to your notes, see whether you're experiencing any of them. I don't want to repeating them. If you have any of them, that's probably the leading cause, is you either have low progesterone or high estrogen. So Environmental Working Group, EWG, says the average woman uses 12 products a day and gets exposed to 168 unique chemical compounds every single day. And guess what? Many of them are endocrine disruptors. There's a link right down below. If you won't have the time to copy it, if you want it, just email my team and we'll send you the links. And actually, any links you want, we'll send you the links. So what's an endocrine disruptor? What's the big deal about it? Now, there are chemicals that interfere with the body's endocrine system, which is the network of glands, including the pineal gland, pituitary, pancreas, ovaries, testes, thyroid, parathyroid, and adrenal glands, and produce adverse hormonal, reproductive, neurological, and immune effects on the body, right? In the body. Pretty serious stuff. And so the key offenders here, and really, I mean, I can write a whole book about this, right? But for the sake of time, this is the flashcard, right, for the biggest offenders. BPAs, found in plastic bottles. Parabens, synthetic preservatives. Phthalates, they make the product smell nice and much longer. Triclosan, an antibacterial agent. Aluminum makes deodorants more effective. Sodium laureth, also known as SLS, right, a foaming agent. Fluoride, an antibacterial agent. Formaldehyde, a bonding agent. Synthetic colors make our products look good. And then you have the perforated chemicals, PFCs, used in nonstick cookware, right? Those are all the things that we find in so many products used on a daily basis. And they have all been linked to estrogen dominance, breast cancers, ovarian, uterine cancers, prostate cancers, inhibited thyroid function, thyroid nodules and thyroid cancers, infertility, child developmental issues, and low sperm count in boys. And hey, you guys, I mean, there's studies for all of them. I'm just gonna flesh out a couple. Like, for example, role of estrogen in thyroid function and growth regulation. Really quite fascinating. And the study says, the conclusion says, there are evidences that estrogen may have direct actions in human thyroid cells by estrogen receptive dependent mechanisms or not, modulating proliferation and function. Different patterns of distribution, expression, and ratios of estrogen receptor alpha and beta may have a role in thyroid cancer cell proliferation, as well as the outcome of thyroid cancer. Studying estrogen effects on thyroid cells is a potential tool to better understand the and then goes on, right? So it's, I mean, you know, which endocrinologist has told you this and you walk into the office and say, hey doc, why am I having these nodules, right? After a sonogram, they say you've got nodules. And they go, well, it's not known. Well, it is known. It's actually right here from the studies, just that somebody just never gets educated on this, that you actually having estrogen dominance and that's causing those those thyroid nodules, right? So resolving estrogen dominance gets resolved hugely through support of your liver. Relationship between everyday use cosmetics and female breast cancer, right? So again, another study that connects cosmetics with breast cancer. Another one that says urinary paraben concentration and ovarian aging among women from a fertility center. That connects those two together, how parabens that are found pretty much in any big commercial skincare product is contributing towards aging of our ovaries. So one of the things I want to talk about is, you know, just the whole BS about what companies are doing when they remove supposedly products that or chemicals that have been proven to be hugely problematic, such as the BPA. And so now we are buying bottles and baby bottles and food containers, right, with BPA-free label on it. And so that gives you this false sense of security. You're going to be okay. You're not going to get cancer because it's BPA-free. Well, let me tell you something. It's a total scam. And I want to show you one article that was done by the CBC in Canada, which is really interesting. The founder or the executive director, Michael Green, who's the ED of Center for Environmental Health, tested his daughter's pink cup in a number of labs. So the lab results was that, let me give you context first. So his daughter was totally addicted to the pink cup. She would not let it go. And so he wanted to know that just because it's BPA free, does it mean that it does not contain any other potentially harmful chemicals? So the lab results were that 9 of the 35 products tested positively for estrogenic impacts, including Juliette's pink cup. 7 of those 9 products had higher levels than cups made with BPA. Can I just repeat this to you? 7 of those 9 products had higher levels than cups made with BPA. So cups that were BPA free were basically more toxic. And then he says BPA isn't in bottles and sippy cups anymore. It's been replaced with other similar chemicals. They take out one that has been found to be toxic and they replace it with chemical cousins where the health impacts are unknown because it's not well tested yet. If later that's one to be toxic, they will switch again, and that's the plan, right? Oh gosh. So I don't know about you, but I feel like, you know, this whole industry of skincare products and, you know, anything to do with these chemicals, that is becoming kind of a cat and mouse game where it's almost impossible to win it, right? Or is it? And so what I want to just highlight a couple of those kind of you know, unethical things that you're facing, but don't worry, I have a solution here for you. So this is not all gloom and doom. And if you know my personality by now, I'm a very positive person. I really want to focus on the things that do work, and there are many that do. So let's focus on that. So one of the things I want to tell you about is greenwashing. Companies like Body Shop and Kiehl's is a good example. beautiful, clean brands that were set up with a very strong mission and passion of the owners, and high efficacy products that are never used any harmful chemicals in them. They get both of them bought over by L'Oreal. And I'm not demonizing L'Oreal. This is happening with most of the big companies. This is just an example. They happen to be both of my former clients. So that's why I know the story inside out. And then they buy them, L'Oreal buys them over. The market doesn't know about that. The consumers don't know about this. And they quietly start changing their ingredients. And the next thing you know, you pick up Kiehl's product today, you want to cry because it is just so full of these harmful chemicals that are so well documented to be creating so many problems for women. But as a consumer, but the greenwashing here comes in when it's marketed as constantly as this beautiful, clean, conscious, caring brand, which is very far from. Oh, there is new ingredients that are being added, like untested, but there's no research yet showing, right? And even if you go to EWG website, they just say there, we do not know, this has not been tested. We've never had the funds to do it yet, or the time. Or they start replacing harmful ingredients with the new untested ones, unknown ones, like the one I showed you just now with the BPA. On your part, you might be just having no time to research all of this, right? You go like, I have no time to be looking at all of this. And the thing that really frustrates me is like it causes the consumers, us, women who are conscious of our health, who want to do the best we can, leaving us in doubt and fear and so much frustration, And this sometimes also kind of results in industries that are then being created of clean products. But then guess what? Is you're paying top dollars for things that, honestly, like some of these brands, I look at the ingredients and it's like, is it really clean? Then I start researching these ingredients and it's really hard to tell. So I know so many of you are just getting frustrated with all of this. You're going, oh my gosh, so now everything is toxic, right? We talked about that earlier. Well, so I want to just give you a different perspective and I offer you a reframe. A reframe basically means a different way of looking at it. My reframe to you is what the British would say, go back to basics, keep it simple and carry on, right? And what I mean by that is then bringing to your life things like that coconut oil and shea butter and honey and almond oil and rosehip oil and lanolin and beeswax or whatever it might be. Those are all natural ingredients that we'll show you where to source them so that you are assured of the top quality. Bringing in those to your life, and that way being assured that what you're putting on your body is safe, is clean, and is inexpensive. This is one of my favorite stories. I want to just share this quickly with you. This is a photo I took of a woman in Bali. As I mentioned to you, I used to live in Southeast Asia for 17 years, and then I moved on to China and in Hong Kong and Shanghai. But when I lived in Southeast Asia, we used to go to Bali a lot for vacations and holidays and weekends. And I was always amazed at how beautiful the Balinese women are. Can you guess how old this lady is? She's 35 years old and she's a mom of 3 children. And she looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean, you could have said she's 18, right? No, she's not. She's 35. She has no wrinkles. She's happy. She's got beautiful, bouncy, abundance of black hair, no white hair. She's got healthy children. And one of the things that I always remember living in Asia is how simply people live. And all she uses she does not use the skincare products that cost $500 a bottle or even $100 a bottle. She uses what's available to her, and that's the basics that I'm talking about going back to. And on that note, I want to give you an example of a recipe that can be very expensive from some of the brands, which is an anti-wrinkle oil. You can make that yourself really simply using 2 tablespoons, so write this down, 2 tablespoons of rosehip oil, which has got an incredible ability of rejuvenation of the skin and regrowth of damaged cells on the skin, combined with 2 drops of rosewood essential oil, which has similar properties, 1 drop of geranium essential oil, and 1 drop of frankincense essential oil. Okay, got that? That's your anti-wrinkle cream. You apply that on your wrinkles before bed or in the morning, and it's just absolutely wonderful. And it costs you 1/10 of the price compared to what you pay from the top-end brands. So my question for you is, what toxic skincare and household items can you commit to changing out today? What are you going to throw out? Write it down on a piece of paper for yourself. Make the commitment today because this is really what, as you can probably hear in my voice, I am super passionate about this. It has become my life's mission to teach women how to help themselves be better, look better, feel better. But one of the things that you have to remember is that learning is one thing. It's great that you showed up here. That's the first wonderful step. Doing is another thing. And so I want you to do things. What can you remove from your house to start helping your hormones? So let's talk about adrenals. That's the last piece that I've promised you here today. We're going to be talking about adaptogens for adrenal health. And so what are adaptogens? Adaptogens dampen the stress response in overactive adrenal glands, and they increase the response in underactive adrenal glands. So as the word adapt means, they will adapt depending to what the body needs. By the way, the picture in the background here is ashwagandha root, which is one of the classical adaptogens used amongst functional practitioners. So I've created this adaptogen continuum for you. There's no way I got the time to go over all of this today, but in the full program you're going to learn, we have a whole class that just teaches about that, where I've categorized the adaptogens, because they are not all the same. You have to remember that. They all have different energetic properties, starting off with stimulating, revitalizing, and then balancing and nourishing, calming, sedating to relaxing, and sedating to sleep. So you can see there's a whole spectrum of them. And I want to just talk about a few of them because it's really important to have the context that I talked about. And this is what you guys are going to be learning if you're joining us for the full program, learning about the context of the different herbs and spices. So when I talk about context is, for example, maca is a wonderful adaptogen, right? I love it. But a lot of people get sick with it, or they get mixed results, or actually negative results. That's because there's different types of maca. There's different ways of preparing it. For example, the gelatinized form is what you should be using and not the raw form, right? There's different strains that are available in the market. Knowing which strain to use is equally important. It's going to make a huge difference how it stimulates, how it supports you. Licorice is another classical adaptogen, but the interesting thing about licorice is that it can be fantastic, but it can also be an herb that overstimulates you, and if you have high blood pressure, you should not be using it. Ashwagandha is another one of my favorites. However, if you are sensitive to nightshade vegetables, so things like tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants give you body pains, or you're doing the paleo for autoimmunity diet, and you should not be using ashwagandha. Again, context here, right? But one of my other favorites, is right here, holy basil. It's one of the adaptogens I drink personally on a daily basis every morning. Turmeric is another interesting one, which is also actually an adaptogen that is can have a calming effect. Did you guys know that there are some genetic mutations? For example, I have the genetic mutations where I actually don't do very well with turmeric. I actually get kind of cranky when I eat it. Kava is also, it helps with sedation and relaxation. Some people get very anxious when they have it. So it's really fascinating how we all have different reactions to the adaptogens, but a spectrum is right there. Write down a few of them here, research them, or come and join us for the full program to learn about it. So the one recipe that I promised you, and I want to deliver on that, is the ashwagandha latte. Really another simple, beautiful recipe where you use a 1 cup full-fat coconut milk. You can replace that also with almond milk if you don't want to do coconut. 2 cups of hot filtered water, 1 teaspoon ashwagandha powder, half a teaspoon cinnamon powder, and half a teaspoon maple syrup or honey. You basically blend all of that on high for 20 seconds in a blender, and you've got this beautiful, frothy, refreshing, very nourishing ashwagandha latte. Isn't that simple? All right, you guys, I'm realizing, so over time, but okay, so Herbs for Balance 6-week online program, for those of you who you think that's gonna be value in this, gonna help you and your family, it's gonna give you a lot of great gift ideas. Come and join us. We've got the risk-free purchase 7 days guarantee with refund if you feel like the program is not for you. Just want to remind you also the beautiful printed book poster and the Clean and Safe brands are yours in a printed version if you sign up within the first 48 hours from the time you're watching this workshop. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some really amazing stuff. I hope you do a lot of the things you've learned here with me today. And I also do hope you join us on this wonderful journey, whether it's by joining the program or you just do it, DIY it from the workshop you've learned today. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today.